Yeah. My bio so that you can share it and then you can learn a little bit about me. And I said, those are, I don't like that at all. Then there'll be some long something when they're done, you're like, hey, who are they talking about? So I have found more interesting way of introducing myself. So I will put up a slide and ask that, just right here, yeah. And then ask you to take a look at everything here, and you get to ask me 3 questions about 3 things that you see up here.
School noodles.
3 questions only. So countdown is on. Some of it, once you see something, it's very obvious. Other things you may be curious. Alright, who's got the first question? Yes, please.
The picture there, where were you going to?
This one. So this one is called buy one get one free. Because you've asked about this picture, but I'll tell you about this. So this is 2015, and in 2013 I set up an organization called AGE, Association of Ghana's Elders. I work with senior citizens, people over 60. And this was part of fundraising. So I went all the way to Tanzania, and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. So this is me with my Ghana flag. You see where I do like the light? Me and my Ghana flag going up to the peak, went all the way to Uhuru Peak. There was a 6-day trek, and then the last day, somewhere around midnight, you start ascending, and then you get to the highest peak. That's like 19,000 kilometers, the equivalent of 19,000 meters, the equivalent of about 5 miles up in the sky. So this was to do fundraising for this. So buy one, get one free. Wow. All right, next question. Yes, sir.
So the image directly above that
this one.
Is that your family?
Some strangers. That's I don't know how they made it on here. But yes, there's somebody sitting, let me see, at the end of this row.
Okay.
And then, so this is Raymond, and Ray is, in fact, sometimes people presume that I'm active in Full Gospel because of him, but before I met him, I had spoken in a few chapters, but right now he's planted my feet firmly. So yes, that's my family. That's Raymond, that's Mary Jane, Monica, and then Joshua, and then myself. All right, I saw your hand. Oh, that was it.
Yeah, I wanted to know if you are a lecturer.
Okay. So teaching is my first love. I've always taught. When I was in college, although in fact when I was in primary school, I used to logo the kids in the area and then help them with homework. And the parents gave me the permission to use the cane, and I enjoyed that. But on a more serious note, my father was a teacher. And the love for teaching for me goes all the way back. I see one of my students in here. I'll mention his name. God is his power. So I did teaching while I was studying, and then in 2008 I joined Ashesi University, and from then till now, but up until 2016, I taught full-time. HR, organizational behavior, negotiation, comparative politics, and then eventually leadership. So from 2010 up until 2020 now, I've been teaching leadership. We have a 4-part seminar series, and I teach the final one. And I don't teach actively anymore. I've told them, if you come to my office and you don't find me, go look in the classroom. You see me lurking around somewhere there. So I don't teach actively anymore, but I'm back at the Ashesi, and we're setting up a center for leadership, and I'm there to help set it up. All right, good. 3 questions. Now we're done. Let's move. Thank you. This is one of the things I do somewhere in my life, so access human capital. Today I want us to look at our world today. When we talk about resilience, we can't talk about that topic Is my movements bothering you? Are you? I'm giving you extra work. I'm trying to stay planted. So let me, can we move this up to the side? Thank you. So let's look at our world today. What do we see in our world today? Let's look and see if there's similar context, examples in the Bible. And then let's figure out what to do about it, given that we are where we are. Tell me what you see up here. Anybody? And the teacher in me can actually walk up to people, oh, I love your natural hair, and then ask you to see. So please be ready. Don't be avoiding eye contact. But what do you see? What do you see up here? What do you see? You see chaos. Okay. What else?
Inflation.
Currency.
Inflation.
See galamsey.
See galamsey.
Monkeypox.
Mpox.
Mpox. Corona self. Hey, sir. Can I kill this green thing? Alright. This is our world today. Lots and lots of challenges. Wherever you look, you'll find that we have issues globally, locally, sometimes in your own home, there's wahala. On the streets, small going from home to work to go and do your work. Even that concept. You are faced with, craters in the middle of the road. It rains and you start panicking because you know that somebody who's homeless here in Accra is at risk of being swept away because of the city you are in. But every 4 years, something happens. We just change back into the same cycle. Right? So there's chaos, there's uncertainty, there's confusion. There's a lot that requires resilience. There's a lot that makes it necessary. It's not just a nice to have, it's a must have. Otherwise, you break under this pressure. It's a very competitive space out there. So let's say you're job hunting, you're discouraged, you're not finding anything, Charlie, your coffers are running dry. Even the car you are sitting in to move from point A to point B, should it break down, should somebody make a mistake, your heart is already, just the palpitations are already there, and then you go and fall in potholes, and then it rains, and then somebody splashes water, just say, everywhere you pass, you will find a reason to take in a deep breath and say, oh Lord, help me. Right? So resilience is really, really important in this kind of world. How many of you have heard of the term VUCA? We live in a VUCA world. VUCA. Okay, I see some 100 going on. Before we get into a VUCA world, where we talk about the things being very volatile around us, things being very uncertain around us, there's a lot of complexity. And when you look around, you see a lot of ambiguity as well. Let's go back into the Bible, right? I've put these names here and a few references. Tell me about chaos in their lives. Joseph, let's start with Joseph. What was the chaos in his life like? Joseph. Not Joseph, the husband of Mary. In fact, he had a chaos. So whether you are doing Old Testament or you are doing New Testament, small chaos things like that. So who can tell us where there was chaos and uncertainty and confusion, etc., in the lives of these people? Joseph, anybody? Yes, sir. Please, I beg you, mention your name before you start.
I'm Pakwisi. So his own brothers sold him. He ended up in a pit. He ended up in a pit before he was sold, and he found himself in another man's land, and there he was accused of something he had not done, ended up in prison.
All right. Thank you very much. So Joseph's story is like a soap opera. Those who like watching the telenovelas and the Nigerian movies, I mean, betrayal, and then he is sold, and he finds himself somewhere, and someone tries to trap him, and then accuses him, then he goes to jail, and then, wow, that's, up and down, all over. If anybody needed resilience, it was Joseph. How about Nehemiah? One of my favorite, in fact, my favorite Bible character after Christ. Nehemiah. If you're looking for a book, recently somebody asked me, this is not the context of a Christian gathering or anything. Some visitors came from outside to Ashesi and they asked me, you're doing this leadership center, all this leadership stuff. What's the one book that has influenced you as a leader and the one book that you'd recommend that anybody should read? I was like, oh, that's easy. They're like, oh, that was fast. It said the book of Nehemiah. Even if you're not a Christian, take the Bible. Go to the book of Nehemiah. You want strategy, it's in there. You want planning, it's in there. You want team building, team management, team performance. You want anything you want to learn in leadership and management. The book of Nehemiah, beginning to end. That's it. Once you read it, you're done. You don't need to read anything else. But anyway, Nehemiah.
So Kwame, so after the pressure came, put him into captivity, came out, planned the building of Jerusalem.
And uncertainty. And then you have Sanballat and Tobias. And then now people who are coming after him, and he's faced with a lot that he has to deal with. If he's not resilient, that wall is not getting built. Because there's pressure, and he has to respond to the pressure. Alright, let's move. Jacob. That's the guru of all the people who needed resilience. Jacob. Story of Jacob. Yes, ma'am.
He's a twin.
What's your name?
Araba, sorry. So he's a twin. He decided to steal his brother's birthright.
Don't miss your words.
And he runs off to his uncle's place and finds his cousin, falls in love with his cousin, works for 7 years for his cousin, he's denied, is stolen away from him again, and then he has to query his uncle, and he gets the one that he loves after the 7 years, and then he decides to come back home, and he has to come home with a lot of goodies for his brother to forgive him.
Alright. So if you think Joseph's story is a soap opera, this is the soap of all soaps, right? Just imagine putting this, I like the way you told the story. I hope you are thinking of, you need Christian productions. I hope you are thinking of some film industry where you're going to tell the story as dramatically as you can. So you have Jacob, and Charlie, he's seen it all. From his parents and favoritism, and how they engaged them in the house, all the way to his life journey, from beginning to end. Plenty drama, uncertainty, chaos, ambiguity, complexity. You wake up one morning and like, hey, who's this in my bed? How did that happen? So when you look around, the kind of confusion we see, the kind of turmoil we see at personal levels, at the level of society, it's not new. Ecclesiastes will tell you, there's nothing new that has happened. If it's happening now, it's happened before. Just maybe different time, different place, different people. Now, when you look through all of this, you ask yourself, as a Christian, what's my response? What's my response? What do you have? This one, please draw your sword. Nobody should nobody should turn on their Bible. Alright? Nobody should turn on their Bible. The one over here. Galatians 5:60, what's there? Draw your sword. Yes, please.
Walk after the Spirit and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh.
Thank you very much. Right, so ground yourself. Walk in the Spirit and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. Thank you. When you look at Joseph, you see that very clearly. I left out Christ because this is the ultimate. All the way to people who have the nerve and the audacity to spit at you, to call you names, when you are the King of Kings, when you created them. And then they have the nerve to treat you the way they do. That's the ultimate. Right? Proverbs 3:5-10. Don't worry. You can paraphrase for today, but please go and chew it properly. Proverbs 3. It's not like you are looking for notes on. Please don't go to your Bible.
You know your ways. You commit your ways.
That's where it comes from. Keep these in mind, right? Matthew 6:33. Where should your focus be? Seek ye first. Alright? What else is there? John 16:33, he says, oh, as for the wahala,
You get
it will come.
It
It will come. Be of good cheer. So as for the chaos, it will come. And then Romans 1:17. Can you start from 16? What's in Romans 1:16? I like the way you're just muttering it quietly, just shoot in case. Shoot in case. Alright. When you look at this, now, when you start thinking of this, you start asking yourself, what kind of person must I be in order to be resilient, in order to survive, in order to thrive? Okay? Survival is when you find, sometimes you find, what do you call it? Oh, you call it, this weed, it's just a blade. And you can walk anywhere and you find it growing. Between slabs, it's there. It just comes up. And you can, at the bottom, there's the bulb. It's like tiger nut. It's like a tiger. And you can pluck it out, you can cut it, give it just a few, weeks, and it's back flourishing. Right? Even when you uproot it, crash, you'll find a way of coming back. Alright? And so it takes a certain kind of Christian to stay resilient. It takes a certain kind of posture, attitude to stay resilient. We'll talk about resilience in a second, but I'll share a couple of resources. And the first one up here is one of my favorite books. It's by a theologian called Richard Foster, The Celebration of Discipline. And he talks about Christian discipline. And so meditation, Bible study, fasting, prayer, silence. Silence is a discipline. Where you're very bubbly and you are eager to step into conversation and the Lord says, hey, Zachariah. And you have to learn to discipline yourself. Alright? Secrecy, he says, it's a discipline. Mary heard, kept it in her heart, and pondered over it. There are certain things God has told you. He didn't tell you to go and broadcast to the world. Keep it here. Ponder over it. When the temptation comes to speak, hush. Fantastic book. Really, really amazing book. And it takes a certain level of discipline to be able to stay resilient, to be able to know what to do when, how to handle the pressures that life will bring you. We'll talk about failure, right? And we'll look at some of these examples right there. Let me put all this here, otherwise I'll get carried away and finish. So, one of the things you want to do is to think of ways in which you keep yourself spiritually alert, grounded, Galatians 5:16, making sure that your sensitivity is to the Holy Spirit so that in a world of chaos, in a world of confusion, in a time of uncertainty, you know how to handle it. Alright? There's head, there's heart, hands, and then feet. Now, when you move beyond, I put celebration of discipline there first because in all that you do, Matthew 6:33, it's your spiritual well-being that you have to take care of. Even if physically you're uncomfortable, but spiritually, God says you're in a good place. That's all you need. Alright? So head, what does it say here? Stay informed. Stay informed. You can't sit and say, oh, I hear them talking about corona, and whatever. That's the world. Oh, minus me. Decide you're just praying. As for corona, it won't come near me. So where they say there's an outbreak here, you decide me, mask, never. I go in faith. There's a very, very fine line between faith and patience. And so you decide I'm not wearing it, not because God has told you specifically that go and step in faith and don't wear a mask. You just decide that you're going without a mask. Everything they say is high risk, you will do. Remember a certain president in a certain African country who went all out and said, oh, there's nothing like that. And today he's 6 feet under. because he decided to show that, oh, this is fake. So we need to, as Christians, learn about what is going on around you. It's galamsey. You may sit here and think, oh, this one really doesn't affect me. There's some people way out there in the Western region who are dealing with this. And I mean, I'm proud, my water is clean, what's the big deal? We live in an ecosystem. Some of the food you're going to eat is going to come from there. You don't even have to go far for galamsey. Just think of the fishermen who go and come back and tell you they see dead fish. The fish, it's not like the fish has been caught in the net and it is dead. There's mercury. Well, we've polluted the environment God gave us. We're not very good stewards, right? And so it may be happening somewhere. But because you exist in an ecosystem, in a food chain, it will come back to you. So we need to learn, we need to read. These days I get very disturbed when I meet young people who have no clue what's going on around them. Some people live in an area, you ask them, which district is this? In Accra. I'm like, yeah, we're in Accra, but that's the city. What's the district we're in? And is it Ayawa? So, and that one, I just throwing it out because they heard something somewhere. And unfortunately for us, because of the mess that we're in politically, some of us have decided to tune it all out and shut it out. That was not Nehemiah. That was not Christ. He walked in the temple and said, no, my father's house. Can't come and do that here. He dealt with it. But these days, we all become very discouraged and we just hide. Oh, let me stay in my one corner, let me do my something over here. And then we stop being civically responsive. Right? So we need to learn, read, find out what's going on in there, what's going on around you. In terms of the various activities, you listen to the news, pay attention. I'm a big culprit myself. I've gotten to this kind and I just shut everything out. But there's a time where we need to actually arise, like Nehemiah. We need to listen to the news. One of the things I like in the celebration of discipline is Richard Foster says for his meditation, he uses the newspaper. And he says, I study the word, I take the newspaper and I ask the Lord, there's so much going on here. Which one do you want me to focus on? Which one do you want me to talk to you about as a prayer topic? Which one do you want me to reflect on? And so he may take the newspaper, see galamsey in there, and say, okay, let me take a verse on creation and our stewardship of creation, and then meditate on that, and then pray about it, and then move out there and do something. Right? So really, really important that we are aware of what's going on around us. Proverbs 4:23. What's there? Proverbs 4:23. I'm giving you the hint.
God will diligently for men to come to all the
Guard your heart, right? With everything that you have. Because in this space, if you're not guarded, if you don't start from your motivations deep within you, what's going on, you'll find yourself making decisions that you look back and you say, hey, how did I get here? I remember, it's interesting that today is September 12th. Yesterday was September 11th. And I remember where I was standing. I was standing when the planes hit into the World Trade Center. I was in the US, I was in Chicago. I remember everything very, very clearly. That day, the world changed. My life changed directly. Because at that time, I was a student. Exactly a month after, actually maybe less than a month after, he sent a letter to all international students and said, those 19 people who were on the flights that, crashed, came in as F1 students in the US. They came in as foreign students. So they sent a letter out and said, if you are an international student and you are out of status, you have 60 days to get out. That's when they set up the Department for Homeland Security. And I had finished my thesis. I finished all my coursework at the University of Chicago, done with all my coursework. And I had my thesis supervisor to chase, very busy woman. So that summer, I wasn't registered as a full-time student. It was just my thesis. That meant I was out of status. to be within status, you had to be full-time, 5 courses or 4 courses, whatever is required. And so I got that letter. I was like, hey. It was harrowing period in my life. Here you are in America. What you came to do, you haven't finished. I went there to get a PhD and come back. I hadn't even gotten there yet. And so, get this letter, and I remember, I think November 6th was my date to exit. And that is where you see Christians. Oh, so I'm glad how I know. Well, find somebody and get married. And then you get your green card sorted. From within the church. When it comes to certain things, especially in the immigrant community, oh, God is blind. He hasn't seen this one. God understands because He knows our status. Oh, go and do nursing. Nursing, there. As soon as you do nursing, you get an opportunity because they are looking for nurses. You get a green card. I don't know what advice I didn't get from all around me. Guard your heart, your motivations. Going back to God and saying, Lord, they've told me everything, and I know that you are God of integrity. I cannot do some of these things they're asking me to do. I'm not interested in this, I'm not going to go and do it. And that's what the Nkra Tower, we're just far from me. Right? And so here I am. This is it. You basically stripped me bare. I have no alternative. I don't know what to do. My boss at the time, I was working on campus, actually said, look, I'm leaving the job very soon, so we can maybe look at processing, and I think you could actually do well in this one. I was like, I'm done with school, I'm left with just my thesis. Why am I starting a new job here when I actually really don't have an interest in it? Some people thought, oh, that's very foolish. But anyway, that's the story behind me going to get a second master's degree. Because in the middle of all of that, God said, I can make a way. And so I found another program, which was open enrollment, meaning I hadn't missed any deadline. It was on a rolling basis. They were going to give me funding, and it was just a bus ride from where I lived. And they were willing to reinstate me because the university I was in was not interested in reinstating me because they had to do paperwork. They're like, nah. But this new institution said, oh yeah, sure, we'll give you the money to come to school, we'll reinstate you, you're all sorted. God provides a way of escape. If you don't focus, if you don't guard your heart, you're going to be led to use this one and just, this makes sense, this is logical. Oh, but between me and God, God knows that this our area that I'm going into is just for the Nkra, so it's okay, He understands. Once I get the green card, I'll go to church and thank Him and give a testimony, and then later on we'll go and we'll annul it, and then I'll go and marry the person that I want to marry. That's how Christians think sometimes. Right? Learn new skills, be ready to do things differently. You have to be resilient. You have to prepare yourself to deal with the kind of chaotic world, complex world that we live in. You can't just be there. The same skills you had 5 years ago, same skills you have now. Right now, I work in, I have an HR firm called Access Human Capital. And I tell people language is not something you studied in school so you can do translation. Those days are gone. When French, Arabic, Chinese, Russian, German, Krogo, ever, when those languages were learned just so you can go and do translation. No. You study those things because I'm looking for a business development person who's going to live somewhere in Adam and can work with the people there. We've opened a factory somewhere in Takwa. We need somebody who can speak Akan. We're looking for a finance person to go work in Senegal. You're looking for somebody who's going to move to Morocco. So the world is such a global place, global village. You need new skills. If you're going to bounce back, if you're going to be resilient, you're going to need new skills. Your old skills are not enough. Be tech savvy. There are people who hold phones, the most high-tech iPhone, where are we now?
16.
Pro Max.
Pro Max. iPhone S25 and 26 and yet we don't use it as a tool to learn new skills. Right? It's really important that we learn new skills and then to be intentional about our journey. be intentional about our journey of faith. Okay? Be ready to respond when God says, I need you to move. I need you to take a certain action. I need you to take a certain decision. Right? So being resilient requires full cooperation from your head, your heart, your hands, and then your feet. Okay? Because the kind of world we live in is very volatile. Nothing stays at the same place. There's a lot of uncertainty. Today, as we sit here, none of us can predict what will happen in the next 5 minutes. You can just presume that nothing has happened in the last 10, 15 minutes, and so there's no earthquake that will show up. So we can just relax. An earthquake could show up. You can't tell. There's uncertainty. Right? And it's a very complex, I don't know how anybody can simplify the world we're in. It's very complex. And if you're here and you have young people in your life, especially teenagers and people who are, above the toddler level, don't dismiss their experiences. I hear a lot of older people always say, oh, you people, you are spoiled. The world you are in, do you know what I went through when I was, a teenager, when I was at your level? The world we are in is more complex than yours. You grew up in a world where if you were unhappy with your friend, the worst was fisticuffs, right, on the playground. And when you are done, that's it. Now you are dealing with a generation that if I have a problem with him, it may never develop into a physical fight. He just says one nasty thing about me on the internet. That's it. That's it. So in the past, your audience was here, just around you. You didn't have to worry about somebody sitting somewhere. Now because of social media, etc., young people see their vulnerabilities exposed to the world. And then it gets to them. I know too many young people who see psychologists, teenagers who see shrinks. No, they shouldn't be. But it's because they live in a very complex world. And adults sometimes do not understand. Adults sometimes do not ask enough questions to even understand what they go through. The fact that you never had shoes and you walked 2 kilometers to school, or you never had pocket money in school, and for you that was the biggest thing. So if you're not facing that as a 14-year-old today, what are you talking about? Do you know what I went through? No. What they're experiencing is equally complex. For older adults, people 60, 70, 80, it's also a very confusing and complex world. The loneliest time is when you're in a crowd and you feel alone. And that's what happens to a lot of senior citizens. Where they are home, daddy's here, mommy's here, grandma is there, the children are here, everybody. So they have company, they have people around them, but they are very alone because everybody's trapped on their phone. Social media, flipping, watching YouTube shorts, one after the other. Everybody is so wrapped up in their own world. So there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of mental oppression right now. The devil has just said, it's a field day, right? And so it's really, really important that we guard ourselves, prepare ourselves, guard ourselves against some of the things that we see. And it is a complex one, we cannot be dismissible. And then lastly, we have a lot of ambiguity. That's what the ambiguity, the less said, the better. Right now, defining what is man, what is woman, is the most complex thing ever. Very, very complex. Because of the ambiguity in our world. If you're a young person who's growing up in Ghana right now, perhaps you're a little shielded. But if you're a young person in the US, I used to teach in a daycare. And I had one child who had 2 mothers. I have 2 mothers. And when you watch him and you listen to him, you're like, innocence and confusion. Right? You're going into a washroom now, there are all sorts of debates, etc., about labeling washrooms in certain ways that, this is transgender. This one is male. You go to a conference and you see he, him, she, her. Why? You have a human being who says, I am them. Hello? That's it. I prefer to go by the pronoun them and they and their. So, hello, hello, somebody's talking to you and it's like, oh, how's your daughter doing? Oh, they are fine. Oh, you have 2 daughters? No. I have 1 daughter. Thank you. My daughter is a thing. Ambiguity, foolish ambiguity, if you ask me. This is the world we live in. Right? But as Christians, we can flip this. And it's important to see how we can flip this to serve. Flip this in a way that helps us to actually thrive. Right? And so in place of volatility, where things change, things are volatile around us. The dollar, whew, the way it moves, only God knows. But in place of volatility, we need to look out for versatility. We need to be versatile. You need to be able to adapt to the changes around you. Otherwise, in this VUCA world, you cannot survive. So you need to be very versatile, not one plug. I know some people are very one plug. The things they saw, they liked, the decisions they made 16 years ago. It's been 16 years and that's all. They are not interested in big change. They are not interested in learning anything new, doing anything this way. It's just one plug, that's it. I have people in my family like that, one plug. So very, very important to think of how to be versatile, how to be dynamic, how to be able to, as you see things change around you, that is an opportunity. This morning, that was my quiet time. Opportunity. A door of opportunity has been opened up onto me. And so, when things go wrong, you see the opportunity. When Homeland Security says, you're out of status, get out of the country, God opens an opportunity where you can actually get a second master. Sometimes people think, hey, that's cool. You have 2 masters. They don't know. Find a reason and a way to be uniquely you. We're in a world with a lot of pressure to conform. And unfortunately, if you have conservative views, I'm not even saying Christian views and Christian values. If you have conservative views and values, the world sees you as, oh, you're very parochial, you're very unaccommodating. Your views are not welcome here. Your views are not liberal enough. And there's something wrong with that. So find ways in which you can be uniquely yourself. To be unique and not to find the pressure to conform. Right? To get to the point where you are secure in Christ. You are secure. There's somebody in my office, anytime you ask, hey, how are you doing? I'm in Christ. That's the response. So the day you don't hear I'm in Christ, I just ask someone. But no matter what, you will hear. Even if there's something that comes first, I'm in Christ will follow. You need to find a way of, or we need to find a way of still staying unique and not feeling that we have to conform. Everybody has, everybody's doing something a certain way. Everybody's listening to certain kinds of music. Everybody's doing things this way. And so you feel the pressure to go along. No, it's okay. God secures us. When we make that decision for Him and say, you know what? Lord, everybody is doing this, but I choose to stand for you. Don't worry, you are covered. Right? You're totally covered. And that is where the resilience is coming from, not from your own strength. Philippians 4:13. He's the one who is strengthening you. Right? So being unique is one of the ways in which we can also deal with the madness around us. And please. Thank you. So there's a need to be courageous in the world today. Courageous conscience, extremely important. So where there's complexity, you need to find the courage to actually take a stand. There are many leaders, many leaders around us, and so many bad decisions in the church, outside the church, in society, in our universities, in our workplaces, whether it's an NGO, whether it's a private company, terrible decisions all around us. It takes courage. And sometimes the question I ask is, what price are you willing to pay? What price are you willing to pay? At what point do you choose to be courageous At what point do you choose to be doing it? At what point do you need to say, this is my conviction, I'm standing by it? If you get the chance, does anybody follow or have an interest, slightest, in American football? Not soccer, American football. Yeah. Okay. There's a team I used to, I'm not a huge fan, but I lived in Tampa, Florida. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's the name of the American football team there. And their coach is called Tony Dungy. And I loved the guy. I'm not an American football fan, but I loved the guy to the point where when he moved to Indianapolis and was with Indianapolis Colts, my allegiance also moved. I just discovered he had written some books. I bought those 2 books. If you find Tony Dungy, any of his books, buy them. One's title is Uncommon. Uncommon. That's it. The title should tell you a lot. It takes a certain courageous conviction where the whole world is telling you one thing to say, this is what I stand for. Anybody know Steve Curry? NBA basketball? Okay. That's another person who openly shares his faith. In a world where when you share your faith, you're seen as narrow-minded, old school, you're not welcome here, you're not liberal enough, right? There's value in doing that because it also builds us up for resilience. All right, and then lastly, how available are you for gospel? Yes, you are standing with your conviction, you're very courageous, and you're very versatile, you're able to, adapt to the situations and everything that changes around you. And that's great. How available are you? Some of us, we are highly skilled. Our skills, God, never. Serving corporate, yes, we'll do it. How many of you are people who would support your church or your chapter with your skills? In my church, I am part of the HR committee. And the HR committee, the church has an office, a secretariat basically running the church. And we volunteer at times. So all the HR things that I would do in corporate, I would do in the church. And so don't think of church work or chapter, membership, and think only in terms of the spiritual. I'll come and I'll lead prayer, and I'll lead Bible study, and we'll go and do an advance, and that's what I do. Perhaps we need an accountant to bring his or his skills here. Perhaps we need somebody who will build a website for the church. Perhaps we need somebody to manage the social media content for the chapter. Are you available to be used? In my church, our slogan is LIC. I go to Legon Interdenominational Church. LIC, the response is saved to serve. Recently, we added one. A young man preached. We had our youth week, and usually one of the youth members would do the preaching. He said, Christians, we like nice, cushioned, comfortable walk with Christ. He said we should start saying saved to suffer. Saved to suffer. But it's saved to serve, saved to mature. Right? So saved to serve, saved to mature. Now saved to suffer. Oh, it's difficult to say. Alright. So really, really important that when you hear resilience, you think of certain things. A rubber band. Today I don't have one. I like to wear them on my wrist a lot. Resilience. The world may stretch you. Circumstances may stretch you. It's a difficult marriage. You are in there and you're wondering, Lord, if I stay here, I'm just pining away. If I go out too, I know that is not what makes you happy. How do I deal with this? And I'm in there and I'm being stretched, pulled in multiple directions. How do I go about this? Even the Christian community I'm in, I cannot find support. Because if I go and I talk to him or I talk to her, I'll be used as the next prayer talk. That's what Christians do. Our gossip is couched in, prayer to everyone, prayer man. So we know sister so and so, and this happened and that happened, and hey, sir. So the prayer topic becomes a topic for gossip. And then after we've spent 20 minutes gossiping about it, let's pray for her. And we use some 2 minutes to say, Lord, may you take care of her, and then we move on with our lives. Exactly, it happens. So it's really, really important that we build our resilience, head, heart, hands, and feet. that we let the Lord use us and help us to deal with this. I haven't talked about failure, and let's do that. We've talked about resilience, being able to bounce back. I didn't pause here long enough. Let me go up here. The capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity. Okay, that's resilience. And when we start looking in our world or in our lives, as for failure, so long as you are human, you have the full capacity to feel successful. Full capacity. Okay? And when you think of it that way, then it's important to start thinking, how does failure come about? Of course, you have an expectation. There's always an expectation. There's always a certain desire, a certain goal. And so I have a quick equation here. Expectation or desire minus the fulfillment. That's failure. So it might be that this time I was unable to fulfill that expectation. Does it mean that's it? No. It just means that this time I went for a job interview, I walked away thinking, yes, I didn't get the job. And the feedback they gave me, somebody sat in my office once and I was interested in the job. By the end of the conversation, I told the person, a lot of the things you said are major turn-offs for me. And I could see her face change. Sometimes you have to be brutally honest, right? And then I proceeded to just explain to her what I meant, etc. So this is somebody who would walk away minus that feedback thinking, yeah, it's all good. This job is mine. But the disappointment will come because the person may not have been as good as they thought. So sometimes the expectations, what we hope for, what we pray for, what we yearn for, what we dream about, it's there, the expectation is there. But for one reason or the other, we may not be able to fulfill that expectation. But it's for that moment. So you should never ever allow failure to keep you in the moment. Right? You may not have been able to fulfill that dream or that goal now. It doesn't mean that that door is closed. It doesn't, and it might actually be that God says, no, I don't need you here. So you hold on, I need you elsewhere. By being sensitive and being available to God also opens us up to hear Him and what He needs to do in our lives. Right? So it's really, really important. Now, I left these boxes blank because this is your assignment. If you want to mitigate or fight failure, what are some of the things you need to do? If the equation up here says that is your inability or the lack of fulfillment, it may not be from your lack of ability to meet a certain expectation, then it tells you that, one, there must always be an expectation. You cannot give up. There has to be an expectation. You have to have a goal, you have to have a dream, you have to have something. Otherwise, how do you even experience failure? That's what failure is, part of life. Failure is really just a stepping stone to success, right? And so you have to have an expectation, you have to have a plan, a goal. And sometimes the world will make you feel that you are lost. It's okay. If you stay lost, then you have a problem. When I meet young people who say, I'm not sure what I want to do. I'm studying this, I don't know what I'll do with it. Or you talk, oh, what are you interested in? I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm interested in. There's nothing that really excites me. And I tell them, that's okay. Even your sense of awareness that says, I don't have anything that draws me. That's okay. But that's what life is about, exploration. So we try this, we realize, I didn't like that, I'm not going there again. You think, oh, I have a student who wants, part of my class required them to go into the community to do service learning. And she came back, she's like, oh my goodness, I never knew I hate children. I'll work with them. And I was like, and I said, no, it's okay. She's learned something about herself. She sees children and she thinks, oh, they're so cute, they're so adorable. And then you're stuck in a classroom with 40 of them in a village somewhere, and the teacher decides, oh, hallelujah, I'll be saved. So today you are here teaching my class, so you will let me step aside and catch my breath small. And they are running, these ones are fighting, this one is doing a teacher, but if you can't go me, this one. And then you realize you become a referee. She came back and she was like, I can't handle this one. And that is learning. When you discover something about yourself, something you didn't know, you assumed you liked children. And you assumed you could work with children. Until you were caught by toddlers and disciplined. They are your bosses, you don't know yet. And then you realize, you know what? You give me this other thing that I'm more interested in. You leave the children for the people who have the giftings for that. And it's okay. So self-discovery is totally okay. It's totally fine. Right? And so it's important to make sure that you're setting that goal, that expectation, maybe in another conversation, talk about how do you discover yourself. Right? So have that expectation and make sure that you're equipping yourself to fulfill it so that the minus becomes a plus. Right? What are some of the things you can do? Read, learn, guard your heart, build new skills, and ask the Lord to lead you wherever He needs you to go. Be available to Him. Right? I hope that in this conversation you found something useful. Because this is it. And what it takes is really you thinking about what can I start doing? What can I stop? What can I start? What can I continue doing? What are some of the things from anything that I've said, anything that the Lord may have prompted you about? What can I stop doing? This is your personal traffic light. What can I stop doing? Maybe I keep putting myself down. I keep kind of thinking, the kind of background that I have, I don't think I can fit into this or fit into that. What do I need to stop doing? I need to stop looking down on myself. There are times when I'm doing an interview and I see somebody's CV and I see, you have a gap here. I can't see anything that you did between this year and that year. Oh, I was unemployed. It's like, okay, unemployed. What did you do during that period? Oh, well, my mom has a shop at Makola and I go and help her. So I helped her with the finance and the bookkeeping. I supervised the girls. I helped with the sales. I did this. I'm like, why is it not on your CV? Because people see it as, oh, this was a small family business. It was just a small shop in Makola. Hey, you've learned accounting. You've done general management. You've done HR. You've done marketing, operations, inventory control. You've done all those things. But because you look down on those humble beginnings, and it's not a big name company, you end up not even putting it on your CV. You've sold yourself short. Right? So what do you need to stop doing? What do you need to start doing? Learning new skills. It might be a language. It might be a tool. I have a friend who in school, all she did was to learn how to braid people's hair. Because in the US, the braided hair, like $400, $300. So imagine you're a student. For cash, all you need is find another friend and say, you know, she needs to get her hair done. Let's braid it for her. I put $400 and we're done. You can actually put yourself through school. So learn something new, start something, and what you're doing that is working for you, keep at it. Right? So those are my thoughts shared with you. If you have any questions, I presume you have time for questions? Okay. Then we can do that. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. All right. Any questions, contributions, thoughts, comments? None? Thank the Lord. Alright, fantastic. Thank you.
Another question.
Questions, they're there by force. If you have questions, great. If not, if there are resources, you're also, it's one of the things that sometimes some resources come to mind and it's useful for people. So if you're wondering about a resource, I mean, what can I do or read or whatever, listen to? Yes,
Thank you very much. The example you gave, asking faking marriage in order to get the necessary documents. It's not the same like Abraham life. This is my sister. It's not the same. Yes.
This question is about my baby. Alright, so it's very interesting. Can I get somebody to find that reference for me in Genesis? When you think of it, you ask yourself, what would Jesus do? Right? You ask yourself, Abraham lied out of fear, out of not knowing, how they were going to treat him or her. In fact, it was self-preservation to make sure that they don't take him out. I would look at that question and say, what does God say about lying? What does God say about lying? What do we believe about faith that God is going to provide a way of escape? Now, in the context of the fake marriages, it's living a lie, no matter how you look at it. I'd rather have a Christian say, yes, it is living a lie. I have done that before. It wasn't right. I know better now. Than to sear our conscience and tell ourselves that God understands. It's okay. Right? Because it is living a lie. If some people may say, but it's a business transaction. This one is just business, purely business. So we get married, we get the encounter, we annul it, go your way, I go my way. And there are so many complications that come. I have a friend in the US now. She's been there, she's a very successful person here. Professional, grown in her career, excellent, top notch. And then she decided to go to abortion. It's been almost 20 years. She hasn't been able to come back. She started the Nkrata warrior thing. The person got upset with her somewhere along the way, stalled the process, told one or two stories about her, that's it. She has to fly another visa. 20 years. Somebody was at the 7th of her career. She's left to do menial jobs here and there, survive. She can't come home. Passport will be the adult. If she steps out, she can't go back. She's invested so much being in there. And so sometimes, when you think even at the level of just learning about the processes, etc., if you're a Christian and you trust that God can open a way, that will not be. God would rather bring you somebody out of the blue. You didn't expect it. You meet somebody and you connect. And you actually have a mutual interest in each other. And you get married to that person. God can do it. I remember a few years ago, I started thinking of leaving my company. And I was like, who's going to buy this company? It's tough because you're in an environment where people will buy a production, manufacturing firm. People would rather come and buy because you're going to put products on the shelf, they know what they can get. This whole service consulting. I don't hear of investors, private equity. How many private equity firms are going to pump money into a service, professional, company? No, professional services, they don't look at us. They look at FFCG, we can put stuff out there. And then one day out of the blue, a friend called me. I hadn't spoken to her in a while. She called and she said, I was talking to somebody who said he was looking for an HR firm to buy. And I thought of you, but I was like, nah. Is too settled and secure in her company. Artist has been around for a while, and I don't think she'd be interested, so I dismissed it. But it just came to mind again, so I figured let me just give you a call. I was like, hey, I'm taking my blessing away. You don't know how I have been asking God, is it even possible? Because I don't see it happen. I didn't sell or anything, but it was God's work showing me that it is possible. I can do it if I choose to. And there was an opportunity, I didn't even go looking for it. But it was just God's way of saying, look, I can do all things soon. So if it is you thinking of selling your company, I can bring you a buyer. You don't even have to go and look. And we had a conversation. I just thought of it and it was like, well, they want this part of the business. They're not interested in this part yet. And I was like, some of my clients, we give them 2 services, recruitment, training, OD, etc. So if you want just the recruitment, it gets a little too murky. So we didn't go in that direction. But it was God's way of telling me I can do it. A while back, I wanted to get a car. And God led me to a vehicle that was, the price was correct. No damage. Everything. It didn't work out, but it was His way of telling me I can do it. If this is what you want, I mean,
Easy.
I can do it. But He will move you away from that opportunity because He's hoping that you've learned the lesson that He can do it. And so when you get caught in that, kata warrior, something that may not be, it may not be wrong. It's a business transaction for you company. All things, it may be lawful, but it may not glorify Him. It may not be helpful, right? And so the first stop is, Lord, give me a way of escape. Give me a way of escape. Otherwise, you end up going down the path. And sometimes, what we face as Christians and we say are attacks from the enemy, it's God's judgment. We don't talk about that enough. Hebrews 10:31. It's a terrible thing to fall into the hands of people. There are decisions we've taken, and God's judgment comes at us. And we say, hey, the devil is on my case. No. Go and do repentance. That's where the problem is. Then God's judgment, like the blood of the Passover, He will wash you with the blood, and then when He gets there, He's distributing the judgment. He says, you minus you, I pass over. So it's not always that the devil is to blame. Anyway, very long answer to your short question. Yes, please.
My name is Simon. Now, my question. So, society or the world has its, let me say, symbols of success. I want to know, in resilience, how to manage your mind and what should be your drive. I'm asking so because I mentioned that society has its symbols of success. So should you define for yourself what is success? Because according to the society, if you haven't maybe done ABC, maybe not married at a certain age, you don't have a child, there's no fulfillment, and probably it could be seen as failure in a sense. So as a person, and particularly for Christians, what should we define what should represent maybe failure for us, success for us, or maybe what society also perceives as and success of?
Thank you. Great question. I wish I had a physical Bible and I can hold that up. But the Bible is somewhere on here. So let me hold that up. That's our definition, right? The Bible. When you read about Christ and John the Baptist, you don't see any ostentation whatsoever. If you decide to hold Christ up as the model, or even Paul, but Paul says, hey, me, I'm human. I imitate Christ. So who are you to follow me? You follow me, I might go wrong. But if you hold up Christ as your example, as the standard, then you ask yourself, a couple of decades ago, you find a lot of Christians wearing the WWJD, what would Jesus do? The band. First of all, if you hold Christ as your standard, then you know, Lord, so long as it glorifies you, and in your mind, in your book, in your word, it's success, then it's successful. Because the things of the world, if you follow the world, you will do things you never ever thought of. I remember meeting one of my friends, and she had lost her hair, she had lost weight, she looked unwell, and it was just family pressure to get married. That was it. Family pressure to get married. It's almost like we are not complete until you are married. Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. But in our society, when parents meet and your mother is sitting there and she's feeling slighted because of the comments. So when she comes and she gives you the pressure, it's not just me giving you pressure. I'm also trying to get peace of mind for myself. And it's sad, but that's society. Right? We do it to men, we do it to women. And for men, it's just waiting till, oh, have you been able to buy this? Have you been able to do this? Now, can you take care of a woman? Yes, those things are important, but sometimes you are made to feel less than. It's like you have to have this grand something before. And if you follow society, you end up going along with people's perceptions of success, people's standards of success. Paul says he's learned to be content. Christ came. What job did he do? That's it. He was a carpenter. He didn't come as a king dropping from the skies. That one will come later. That's part 2. Baby, manger, meh all around him, smelly manger. That is how he came. That is for him. That was good. And so when you follow the world standards, unfortunately, you can never keep up. I often say life is a sandwich, and you're always the meat in between. When you look underneath, you find a piece of bread. That's somebody who's looking at you and thinking, you have arrived, and I want to be like you, and I want to be like you. And if you're not careful, you go S. Right? When you look above, you might get discouraged. Because there's somebody who has a better car, a better job, earns more money, has this, has that. And you look at yourself and you feel less than because you're defining yourself by that standard. When I was in secondary school, our headmistress told us, never compete against anybody in any school. You are your own competition. And it's something that has stuck with me. So every year on my birthday, I do a self-assessment. Spiritual, I start Bible study, prayer, fasting, witnessing, A to F. Sometimes I spell my name because he comes inside. I do a self-assessment, a very brutal one. And then the next year I do it, and I keep them in the same place. So I get to go and see the trend. Right? You always have to look back. The version of you 2 years ago should not be the same version today. Your success is not defined by what is around you. It's like, Lord, I want to be like you. To be like Christ is the ultimate in terms of success. And so, Lord, what is it that moves me closer and closer to being more and more like you? If I look at last week, but last year, I saw myself not even having quiet time. And this year I'm having quiet time. That's an improvement. I'm not preaching anywhere, but I'm getting closer to you in that sense. And maybe my quiet time, I'm just using some reference I read. Next year, I find myself at the point where in my quiet time, I read and I take notes. I have moved ahead. So you set the standard for yourself, and you are your own competition. So you look at your last, it's like the people who go and do Olympics. You look at your last record, and you fight to improve that same record. Your eyes are not on the world, because the world can deceive you. Right? I have people laugh at my car, including my employees. They give it names. Old Navy, Olojo, Jalopi, Limousine, plenty names. Because the guy is 17 years old. And I see you, now cat see. That's like and sometimes it's like, hey, it's good. Yeah, sure, fast. I'm like, look, the way I see success, a good name is better than riches. Doesn't mean I don't want to sit in a nice car. Of course not. But if I'm not at the point where I can do so comfortably without causing stress, financial stress in other areas of my life, can it move? Yes. Am I safe in it? Yes. Hallelujah. Otherwise, and that's also one of the complexities for young people today. They keep looking around, and it's all about, when you see them on Snapchat and Instagram and when you see those things, it's because somebody has posted They need to outdo the other person. They need to also, show. So there are people who live their lives on social media. They are eating, they take a photo. It's on Instagram. They are driving, the camera is on there. I have a friend who used to do that. The camera is there, of blessed memory. Camera is there. He's not saying anything, but it's just, so he's driving, listening to his music, and the camera is just there. He's posting on Facebook. Today he's 6 feet under. What did that do? So at the end of the day, Christ is the standard. Your level of success, your idea of success should not be that of the world. So set for yourself that standard which is Christ and say, Lord, if it glorifies you, hallelujah. If it doesn't glorify you, make me uncomfortable. Yesterday I prayed a certain prayer with somebody and I'm sure they haven't forgiven me yet. I told them, there's something you need to do. I will pray and tell the Lord to make you so uncomfortable until you act. Because I heard, what am I saying? Like, don't worry. Make, but can't change your mind. That you'll be so uncomfortable until you take action. So, Christ is the standard. Bottom line. Christ is the standard.